Put that stolen card down right now, you ghetto trash, before I have you arrested. Derek Thornfield's venomous words echo through the Grandview Plaza Hotel lobby. Margaret Wellington's hand freezes over the marble counter, her government-issued card glinting under crystal chandeliers. The hotel manager's face contorts with pure hatred. Margaret's voice cuts through the tension like steel. That card is legitimate. I suggest you process my reservation immediately. Derek's laugh is ugly and sharp. Legitimate? A welfare queen like you with government clearance? Please! He grabs the card, waving it mockingly. This is stolen federal property, and you're going to prison. Wealthy guests pull out phones, recording every word. The desk clerk backs away, horrified. Margaret doesn't move. Behind her calm exterior, something dangerous glimmers. Derek just made the biggest mistake of his life. The Grandview Plaza Hotel stands like a fortress of old money in Chicago's Gold Coast district. Marble columns stretch 30 feet high, supporting hand-painted ceilings that cost more than most people's homes. Persian rugs worth 6 figures cushion the footsteps of senators, CEOs, and foreign diplomats who treat this lobby like their private club. Derek Thornfield has ruled this kingdom for 15 years. His corner office overlooks Lake Michigan, filled with awards for excellence in hospitality management. What those plaques don't mention is his unofficial policy of maintaining standards, code words that keep certain people out. Margaret Wellington steps through the revolving brass doors carrying a simple black briefcase. Her navy blazer and matching skirt speak of quiet professionalism, not flashy wealth. The rental car keys in her hand belong to a modest Toyota, not the Bentleys and Maseratis lined up at valet. She moves with purpose across the lobby's expanse. Her phone buzzes constantly, missed calls from director's office, SecDef, and POTUS scheduler. Each notification carries the weight of national security decisions waiting for her input. At 45, Margaret has climbed higher in federal service than most people dream possible. Her corner office in Washington, D.C. overlooks the Potomac. Her security clearance opens doors that presidents need permission to enter. But here, in this gilded cage of privilege, she's just another black woman who doesn't belong. The hotel's culture reeks of exclusion disguised as excellence. Staff receive training on reading guests, determining who deserves the presidential suite versus who gets directed to more affordable accommodations downtown. Previous complaints about discrimination vanish into corporate filing cabinets, dismissed as misunderstandings or policy confusion. Derek watches Margaret approach from his elevated position behind the concierge desk. His trained eye catalogs every detail. Modest car, government card, confident posture that he interprets as attitude. In his twisted worldview, she represents everything wrong with modern America. People who don't know their place. The lobby's other occupants embody Derek's ideal clientele. Senator Bradley discusses defense contracts near the marble fireplace. Oil executive Patricia Hammond reviews quarterly projections at a corner table. Investment banker Charles Whitmore conducts phone meetings worth millions while sipping 20-year scotch. Margaret's reservation confirmation glows on her phone screen. Presidential Suite M. Wellington, official government business. The booking came through federal channels, pre-authorized by the Treasury Department's travel office. Her per diem allowance exceeds what most people earn monthly. But Derek sees none of this context. His prejudice creates a narrative where government cards equal fraud, where confidence equals arrogance, where Margaret's very presence threatens his carefully constructed world of white privilege. The hotel's brass nameplate reads, "Excellence through tradition." Tradition that historically excluded people who look like Margaret. The building itself carries this legacy. Constructed in 1924, it once openly banned black guests. Legal integration forced policy changes, but Derek ensures the spirit lives on through selective enforcement of arbitrary rules. Margaret approaches the mahogany desk where Derek waits like a spider in his web. She's handled hostile environments before. Congressional hearings where senators question her qualifications, military briefings where generals test her resolve, international negotiations where adversaries probe for weakness. This should be simple. Check in, attend tomorrow's classified briefing on cyber warfare threats, return to Washington. Her schedule allows no room for complications. The Secretary of Homeland Security expects her report by Monday. The president's national security team needs her assessment by Tuesday. Derek's fingers drum impatiently on the leather-bound guest registry. His territory, his rules, his power to decide who belongs. The government card in Margaret's wallet represents authority he can't comprehend. Clearance levels above his security guard friend's knowledge. Access to information that shapes global policy. The collision between Derek's ignorance and Margaret's reality approaches like a freight train heading for a brick wall. He sees threat where respect is warranted, fraud where legitimacy exists, attitude where professionalism prevails. Margaret reaches the desk, extending her identification and government travel card with practiced efficiency. Her voice carries the tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed, not questioned. "Good afternoon, I have a reservation under Wellington. Presidential suite." Derek's sneer spreads across his face like oil on water. The trap is set. The prey has walked directly into his web. He has no idea he's about to tangle with a predator far more dangerous than anything he's ever encountered. Derek's eyes narrow as he examines Margaret's government card like a detective studying evidence. The plastic gleams under lobby lighting, official seals and magnetic strips marking it as genuine federal property. But in Derek's twisted worldview, authenticity means nothing when it doesn't match his prejudiced expectations. "Ma'am, I'm going to need secondary verification for this unusual payment method." His voice drips condescension, each word carefully chosen to sound professional while delivering maximum insult. Government cards require special handling protocols. Margaret's patience shows cracks around the edges. "The card is valid. My reservation was confirmed through official channels. I need to check in immediately." "Oh, I'm sure you do." Derek holds the card up to the light theatrically, performing for the growing audience of hotel guests. "It's just that we've had problems recently with fraudulent federal credentials. Very sophisticated operations, you understand." Senators Bradley and Hammond pause their conversation to watch the spectacle. Investment banker Whitmore leans forward in his leather chair, phone call forgotten. The lobby's acoustic design carries Derek's voice to every corner, ensuring maximum humiliation for Margaret. "Sir, I've provided valid identification and payment. Process my reservation or direct me to someone who will—" Margaret's tone sharpens, revealing steel beneath silk. Derek's grin widens. He's hooked a big fish and plans to reel it in slowly. Now see, that attitude is exactly what raises red flags. Legitimate government employees don't get defensive about verification procedures. Behind the marble counter, desk clerk Karen shifts uncomfortably. She's witnessed Derek's verification procedures before, always applied selectively, always targeting guests who don't fit his narrow definition of acceptable clientele. Her computer screen shows Margaret's reservation. Prepaid, government authorized, no red flags anywhere. "Karen, run a fraud check on this card," Derek commands loudly. "Cross-reference with the federal database for stolen credentials." Karen's fingers hover over her keyboard. "Sir, the system shows everything's legitimate. The reservation came through Treasury Department channels." "I don't care what the system shows," Derek snaps. "Run the fraud check, now." Margaret watches this performance with growing recognition. She's seen this movie before, power-drunk officials using bureaucracy as weapons, creating obstacles where none should exist. In congressional hearings, she dismantles such tactics with surgical precision. Here, she must navigate more carefully. "Is there a problem with my reservation?" Margaret asks, her voice carrying subtle authority that makes nearby guests look up. Derek pounces on her tone. "There's that attitude again. Ma'am, legitimate travelers cooperate with security protocols. They don't demand special treatment or try to intimidate staff." The word intimidate hangs in the air, thick with irony. Derek stands 6'2" behind his elevated desk platform, using every inch of height advantage. His voice booms across marble and crystal while Margaret speaks in measured tones. Yet somehow, in his narrative, she's the aggressor. "I'm not intimidating anyone," Margaret replies evenly. "I'm requesting standard hotel services that I've already paid for." "Standard services, yes, but this isn't a standard situation." Derek pulls out his phone with theatrical flourish. "Karen, what's Detective Morrison's number? The one who handles fraud cases." "Mr. Thornfield, I really don't think—" Karen begins. "I'm not paying you to think," Derek cuts her off. "Get me Morrison's direct line. Tell him we have sophisticated credit card fraud in progress." Margaret's briefcase contains documents that could reshape national security policy. Her phone holds direct lines to cabinet secretaries and military commanders. Tomorrow's classified briefing depends on her presence. But Derek sees only what his prejudice allows, a black woman who dared enter his domain with confidence. "Sir, before you make that call, perhaps we should resolve this privately," Margaret suggests, offering him an escape route he's too blinded by bias to recognize. Derek interprets her diplomatic approach as weakness. "Privately? So you can spin some sob story? No, ma'am. When federal credentials are involved, everything goes through proper channels." He dials Detective Morrison's number with exaggerated care, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "Rick, Derek Thornfield at the Grandview. Yeah, I need you down here immediately. We've got a fraud situation involving government credit cards." Margaret's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. She's allowing Derek enough rope to hang himself, but his performance grows more outrageous by the minute. "Describe the suspect?" Derek continues into his phone, staring directly at Margaret. African-American female, mid-40s, well-dressed but trying too hard to look legitimate, claims to be some kind of government official. The words hit like physical blows. Senator Bradley's wife covers her mouth in shock. Even investment banker Whitmore looks uncomfortable with Derek's blatant racism disguised as security protocol. No, Rick, she's not cooperating fully. Keeps demanding special treatment, getting aggressive when questioned. Yeah, bring backup. These organized fraud rings can be dangerous. Margaret remains statue still during Derek's character assassination. Each false word will come back to haunt him, but he's too drunk on his own power to realize he's digging his grave deeper with every sentence. 10 minutes? Perfect. I'll keep her contained until you arrive. Derek hangs up with smug satisfaction, then addresses Margaret with cruel delight. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to take a seat over there while we wait for the authorities. And don't even think about leaving. That would just prove your guilt." He points to a small cluster of chairs near the lobby's service entrance, the furthest point from the main seating area where legitimate guests relax. The message is clear. She doesn't belong among civilized people. "This is ridiculous," Margaret says quietly. "You're making a serious mistake." "The only mistake would be letting you walk out of here with stolen federal property," Derek replies, his voice growing louder for maximum audience impact. "Karen, call hotel security too. Make sure they're positioned at all exits." Two hotel security guards emerge from hidden alcoves, taking positions that block Margaret's path to the main doors. Their uncomfortable expressions suggest they know this is wrong, but Derek's authority overrides their better judgment. Margaret glances at her phone again. 23 missed calls now. Each notification represents critical national security business grinding to a halt because of one man's ignorance and hatred. "You people always think you're above the law," Derek continues his performance, feeding off the growing crowd's attention. "Well, not in my hotel. Here, everyone follows the same rules." The irony burns like acid. Derek has created an entirely different set of rules for Margaret, rules based solely on her skin color, rules that transform legitimate business into criminal suspicion, rules that turn professional courtesy into threatening behavior. Margaret takes the indicated seat with grace that contrasts sharply with Derek's crude theatrics. She understands something he doesn't. Real power doesn't need to shout. Real authority doesn't require an audience. Real justice operates with surgical precision, cutting through lies and prejudice like a laser through tissue. Derek has set his trap perfectly. The police are coming. Security guards block the exits. Witnesses record every moment. In his mind, he's the hero of this story, the vigilant manager who stopped a sophisticated fraud. He has no idea that the trap he's built will snap shut on him instead. The authorities he's called will arrive to find not a criminal, but one of their own superiors. The witnesses recording this spectacle will capture not his triumph, but his humiliation. Margaret checks her phone one more time. 31 missed calls. The most powerful people in America are desperately trying to reach the woman Derek just branded a criminal. His biggest mistake isn't racism, though that's unforgivable. His biggest mistake is underestimating exactly who he's chosen as his victim. The storm is coming, and Derek stands directly in its path. The FBI's black Suburban slides to a stop outside the Grandview Plaza with practiced efficiency. Special Agents Sarah Collins and James Rodriguez emerge, their crisp suits and purposeful stride commanding immediate attention from hotel staff clustered near the entrance. Collins carries a leather folder thick with fraud investigation protocols, while Rodriguez's hand rests casually near his service weapon. Derek rushes to meet them at the revolving doors, his face flushed with excitement and vindication. "Agents Collins and Rodriguez, thank God you're here. I've got her contained in the lobby, but she's been getting increasingly agitated." Collins surveys the opulent lobby with professional detachment. "Mr. Thornfield, walk us through exactly what happened. Start from the beginning." "She walked in here like she owned the place," Derek begins, his voice carrying across the marble expanse where Margaret sits with dignified composure. "I tried to use what's obviously a stolen government credit card. When I questioned her about it, she got hostile and demanding." Rodriguez takes notes while scanning the crowd of wealthy guests who've gathered to witness the drama. Phones capture every moment, some live streaming to social media where hashtags like #HotelDiscrimination begins trending within minutes. "Sir, has the guest made any threatening statements or gestures?" Collins asks, following standard protocol for fraud investigations. Derek seizes the opening. "Absolutely. She kept insisting I should know who she is, making veiled threats about my job. Classic intimidation tactics from these organized rings. They train them to act confident and entitled." Margaret overhears every word of Derek's fabricated testimony, but maintains her silence. Her phone continues buzzing insistently. 37 missed calls now from numbers that would make Derek's blood run cold if he understood their significance. "We'll need to interview the suspect," Rodriguez announces, his voice echoing off crystal chandeliers. "Mr. Thornfield, can you provide a private space?" "Of course! Use our Wellington conference room." Ironic name considering? Derek's cruel laugh makes several guests visibly cringe. The agents approach Margaret with professional courtesy that contrasts sharply with Derek's hostility. "Ma'am, we're Special Agents Collins and Rodriguez with the FBI. We need to ask you some questions about allegations of credit card fraud." Margaret rises gracefully, her movements betraying no fear or guilt. "I understand you're doing your job, agents. I'm happy to cooperate fully." Derek interjects loudly. "See? She's trying to charm you now. That's exactly how these scams work. They seem reasonable until you catch them." Collins shoots Derek a warning look. "Sir, please let us handle the interview process." The Wellington conference room overlooks Lake Michigan through floor-to-ceiling windows. Mahogany tables, leather chairs, and oil paintings of Chicago's founding fathers create an atmosphere of power and privilege that seems to mock Margaret's current predicament. Rodriguez activates a digital recorder. "This is Special Agent Rodriguez conducting an interview regarding suspected credit card fraud at the Grandview Plaza Hotel. Present are Special Agent Collins and the subject, who states her name is Margaret Wellington." "Ma'am, you understand you're not under arrest, but anything you say can be used in future proceedings." Collins begins the formal dance of federal investigation. Margaret nods calmly. "I understand completely, Agent Collins. Can you explain your presence at this hotel and the source of the government credit card in question?" "I'm here on official government business. The card was issued through proper federal channels for authorized travel expenses." Margaret's answers are precise, professional, revealing nothing beyond the immediate questions. Derek hovers near the conference room door like a vulture, occasionally interjecting comments designed to prejudice the agents. "Ask her about that attitude when I questioned the card. Legitimate travelers don't get defensive about verification procedures." Rodriguez examines Margaret's identification documents with increasing confusion. Her driver's license, passport, and federal employee ID all appear genuine. But Derek's insistence on fraud creates cognitive dissonance that clouds his professional judgment. "Ma'am, what exactly is your position with the federal government?" Collins probes deeper. Margaret chooses her words carefully. "I work in national security. The specifics are classified, but my credentials should be verified through appropriate channels." "See? Vague answers, claims of classified information, textbook fraud behavior," Derek whispers loudly enough for everyone to hear. Collins runs Margaret's name through the FBI's database system. The results make her pause, frown, then request additional verification. Something doesn't compute correctly in the system, showing partial information with multiple security clearance levels that require higher authorization to access. There seems to be some confusion in our database, Collins admits. Your records show classification levels we can't access from this terminal. Derek pounces triumphantly. Because they're fake. These fraud rings create sophisticated false identities with just enough legitimate-looking details to confuse investigators. Rodriguez attempts to verify Margaret's employment through standard federal personnel channels, but hits similar roadblocks. Her clearance level triggers automatic security protocols that deflect inquiries to higher authorities. Ma'am, we're going to need you to provide additional verification of your federal employment, Rodriguez states formally. Margaret maintains her composure despite the mounting absurdity. I understand your position, Agent Rodriguez. However, my security clearance level restricts how I can verify my identity. Perhaps you could contact your supervisors for guidance. Derek's performance reaches fever pitch. More delays! More excuses! She's stalling for time while her accomplices escape. These people always have elaborate stories about security clearances and classified positions. Outside the conference room, hotel guests press closer to the glass walls, phones recording every moment of Margaret's interrogation. The live streams attract thousands of viewers as word spreads about a dramatic FBI arrest at Chicago's most exclusive hotel. Collins attempts to reach her supervisory agent but gets voicemail. Rodriguez tries the FBI's Fraud Division hotline, but encounters typical Friday afternoon staffing shortages. Both agents feel pressure mounting from Derek's constant commentary and the growing crowd of witnesses. Ma'am, I'm going to need to search your belongings for additional evidence, Collins announces, moving beyond standard questioning protocols. Margaret's briefcase contains documents that could compromise national security if examined by unauthorized personnel. Agent Collins, I must respectfully request that you contact the Department of Homeland Security before proceeding with any search. Derek explodes with manufactured outrage. She's obstructing a federal investigation, trying to hide evidence. This proves she's guilty. The agents exchange uncertain glances. Derek's bombastic certainty contrasts with Margaret's calm professionalism, creating confusion about who represents legitimate authority in this situation. Rodriguez makes a tactical decision that will haunt his career. Ma'am, refusing to cooperate with a federal investigation constitutes obstruction. We'll need to examine your belongings. Margaret's briefcase opens to reveal documents stamped with security classifications that make both agents pause. Strategic assessments, threat analyses, and communication protocols bear official seals that look genuine, but reference programs beyond their clearance levels. These documents appear legitimate, Collins admits quietly to Rodriguez. Derek overhears and escalates his performance. Of course they look legitimate. These fraud rings invest serious money in forgeries. The more official they appear, the bigger the scam. Margaret's phone erupts with another barrage of calls. The display shows Director FBI, but Derek interprets this as further evidence of elaborate deception. Look at that. She's programmed fake official numbers into her phone. Probably has recordings of people impersonating federal officials. These criminals think of everything. The agents confiscate Margaret's phone as potential evidence, cutting her off from the very people who could resolve this nightmare instantly. Each missed call represents another moment of mounting crisis in Washington, D.C., where Margaret's absence is creating ripple effects throughout the national security apparatus. Rodriguez attempts one more database search, this time using Margaret's social security number and federal employee identification. The system returns error messages indicating classification levels beyond his authorization. But Derek's relentless pressure prevents careful analysis of what these errors actually mean. "She's manipulated your computers!" Derek shouts. "Probably hacked the FBI database to insert false records. You're dealing with sophisticated cyber criminals here." Collins feels the walls closing in from multiple directions. Derek's pressure, the growing crowd, her inability to verify Margaret's claims, and the woman's unnaturally calm demeanor that could indicate either innocence or criminal sophistication. "Ma'am, I'm placing you under investigative detention pending further verification of your identity and these documents," Collins announces, crossing a line that will end her career advancement permanently. Margaret finally speaks the words that will haunt everyone involved. "Agent Collins, you're making a mistake that will have consequences far beyond this hotel. I strongly advise you to contact your director immediately." Derek's triumphant laughter fills the conference room. There it is! The threat! Just like I told you, she thinks she's untouchable. Neither agent realizes they've just detained one of the highest-ranking federal officials in America. Neither understands that Margaret's phone contains direct lines to the president's national security team. Neither grasps that their routine fraud investigation is about to trigger a crisis that will reach the highest levels of government. Margaret sits in investigative detention, watching Derek celebrate his perceived victory, knowing that reality is about to crash down on everyone with devastating force. The storm has arrived, and Derek stands directly in its eye. Agent Collins' secure phone erupts with an urgent ringtone that cuts through the conference room tension like a blade. The distinctive tone indicates a call from FBI headquarters priority level that demands immediate attention regardless of ongoing operations. Agent Collins, FBI Chicago Field Office, she answers crisply, expecting routine supervisory guidance about the fraud investigation. Agent Collins, this is Director Patricia Hayes. The voice carries unmistakable authority that makes Collins snap to attention. You need to release Director Wellington immediately and provide full cooperation for any requests she may have. Collins blinks in confusion, certain she misheard. Ma'am, I think there's been some confusion. We're currently investigating a credit card fraud suspect named Margaret Wellington. There is no confusion, Agent Collins. Director Hayes' voice turns ice cold. You are currently detaining the Director of Cybersecurity for the Department of Homeland Security. Director Wellington reports directly to the Secretary and has top-secret SCI clearance with direct White House access. The phone nearly slips from Collins's suddenly sweaty palm. Rodriguez watches her face drain of color as the magnitude of their mistake becomes clear. Ma'am, we had no indication. The hotel manager reported. Our database searches couldn't be verified. Collins stammers, her career flashing before her eyes. Agent Collins, I'm providing verification code Tango 77 Alpha 9er. Cross-reference that with Director Wellington's federal employee number 0847TS 9921. Do it now. Collins frantically types the codes into her secure laptop, while Rodriguez stares in growing horror. The screen populates with information that makes both agents' stomachs drop into their shoes. Margaret Wellington, Director, Cybersecurity Division, Department of Homeland Security. Security clearance, top secret, SCI with compartmentalized access. Reports to Secretary of Homeland Security. White House Liaison, direct access. Current assignment, classified briefing on critical infrastructure threats. Oh, God, Rodriguez whispers, reading over Collins's shoulder. Derek presses against the conference room glass, growing agitated by the agent's sudden change in demeanor. What's happening in there? Why did you stop questioning her? Director Hayes continues her devastating revelation. Director Wellington was scheduled to brief the president's national security team on Monday regarding threats to our electrical grid. Her absence has already triggered security protocols at the highest levels of government. Collins looks at Margaret, who sits with the same calm dignity she's maintained throughout this nightmare. No smugness, no anger, just the patient endurance of someone who knows that truth eventually prevails. Agent Collins, you have 60 seconds to apologize to Director Wellington and ensure she receives every courtesy befitting her position. The Secretary of Homeland Security is personally monitoring this situation. Yes, ma'am, Director Hayes. We'll correct this immediately. The call ends, leaving Collins and Rodriguez staring at each other in professional terror. They've just detained and searched one of the most powerful women in federal law enforcement. Margaret speaks for the first time since the phone call began. Agents, I understand you are following procedures based on the information provided. However, this situation has escalated beyond hotel management. Collins struggles to find words that might salvage her career. Director Wellington, we had no idea. The hotel manager insisted. Agent Collins, Margaret interrupts gently but firmly. I suggest you focus on damage control rather than explanations. This incident will require extensive documentation and review. Rodriguez unlocks Margaret's handcuffs with shaking fingers. Director, we sincerely apologize for this misunderstanding. Is there anything we can do to return my phone and belongings, then escort me to the hotel manager so I can address his false accusations directly? Derek watches through the glass as both FBI agents suddenly treat Margaret with obvious deference and respect. His triumph transforms into confusion as Collins opens the conference room door with obvious reluctance. "Mr. Thornfield, there's been a significant misunderstanding," Collins announces with forced professionalism. "Misunderstanding? What kind of misunderstanding? You caught her red-handed with stolen credentials." Margaret emerges from the conference room with her briefcase and phone, flanked by two FBI agents who now treat her like visiting royalty. The lobby's atmosphere shifts dramatically as word spreads that something major has changed. "Ma'am, again, our deepest apologies for this incident," Rodriguez states loudly enough for nearby guests to hear clearly. Derek's face cycles through confusion, denial, and dawning horror as Margaret approaches him with the measured pace of inevitable justice. "Mr. Thornfield," Margaret says quietly, her voice carrying more authority than Derek's loudest shouts ever possessed, "I believe we need to discuss your allegations of credit card fraud." But the agent said you were..." Derek's world crumbles in real time as his brain struggles to process the reversal. Agent Collins delivers the killing blow. "Mr. Thornfield, you've filed a false police report against a federal official. We'll need to discuss the legal implications of your actions." The lobby erupts as guests realize they've witnessed not a fraud arrest, but a massive case of discrimination against one of America's highest-ranking federal officials. Phones capture Derek's shock and Margaret's dignified composure as power dynamics flip completely. Derek Thornfield, who minutes ago commanded the room with racist authority, now stands exposed as a fool who just declared war on the United States government itself. Margaret checks her phone. 47 missed calls from people who could end Derek's life as he knows it with a single conversation. The hunt is over. The predator has revealed herself, and Derek has nowhere left to run. Derek's knees buckle as the full weight of his catastrophic mistake crashes down like an avalanche. His face cycles through disbelief, panic, and desperate calculation as he watches Margaret Wellington, the woman he publicly branded a criminal command respect from federal agents who minutes ago treated her as a suspect. "There must be some mistake," Derek stammers, his voice cracking like a teenager's. You said she was using stolen credentials. I was protecting the hotel's reputation." Agent Collins delivers Derek's death sentence with clinical precision. "Mr. Thornfield, you filed a false police report against the Director of Cybersecurity for the Department of Homeland Security. This constitutes a federal crime with serious legal implications." The lobby erupts in chaos as guests process the magnitude of Derek's downfall. Senator Bradley's wife gasps audibly. Investment banker Whitmore shakes his head in disgust. Phones capture every moment of Derek's public humiliation as social media explodes with real-time updates. Margaret's phone buzzes constantly with calls from Washington, D.C. Each notification represents another government official learning that one of their highest-ranking colleagues was detained and searched because of racial discrimination disguised as fraud prevention. "Director Wellington, I sincerely apologize," Derek babbles desperately. "This was all a misunderstanding. I was just following standard security protocols. You have to understand my position." "Your position?" Margaret's voice cuts through Derek's excuses like surgical steel. "Your position was to provide professional service to all guests regardless of their appearance. Instead, you chose to weaponize law enforcement against me based solely on the color of my skin." Derek's corporate training kicks in with pathetic desperation. "Ma'am, the Grandview Plaza Hotel maintains the highest standards of customer service. Race played no factor in my decision-making process. I was simply concerned about potential fraud." "You called me ghetto trash in front of dozens of witnesses," Margaret states flatly. "You suggested I found my government credentials in a parking lot. You told FBI agents I was part of an organized criminal ring. Which part of that represents your highest standards?" The words hang in the air like poison gas. Nearby guests pull out phones to verify if they recorded Derek's racist tirade. Several nod grimly, confirming they captured his most damning statements on video. Karen, the desk clerk, approaches with obvious reluctance. "Mr. Thornfield, I have Mr. Henderson from corporate headquarters on line 1. He says it's urgent." Derek's face goes white as fresh snow. Corporate involvement means his career is already over, but he clings to false hope like a drowning man grabbing broken driftwood. "Tell him I'll call back. I'm handling a situation here." "Sir, He says he's watching live streams of the incident. He wants to speak with you immediately. Margaret observes Derek's meltdown with the detached interest of a scientist studying a particularly fascinating specimen. She's witnessed similar collapses in congressional hearings when corrupt officials realize their schemes have been exposed. Agent Rodriguez receives instructions through his earpiece and approaches Margaret with obvious deference. Director Wellington, we've been ordered to escort you to your suite and ensure you have everything needed for your stay. The Bureau also requests a private debriefing about this incident. Of course, Agent Rodriguez. I'll need 30 minutes to handle some calls, then I'm available for your debriefing. Derek watches this exchange with growing desperation. The very agents he summoned to arrest Margaret now treat her like visiting royalty while discussing his legal jeopardy. Wait! You can't just leave! We need to resolve this misunderstanding! Derek's voice rises to a desperate shriek that echoes off marble walls. Margaret turns back with the patient expression of someone explaining simple concepts to a confused child. Mr. Thornfield, this isn't a misunderstanding. This is discrimination, false accusation, and abuse of authority. The resolution will come through proper legal channels. Hotel security guards who earlier blocked Margaret's exit now form a protective escort as she moves toward the elevators. The role reversal is complete and devastating. Derek's authority evaporated while Margaret's true power emerged like the sun breaking through storm clouds. Director Wellington, Derek calls out in final desperation. Surely we can handle this between professionals. I made an error in judgment, but my intentions were good. I was trying to protect the hotel. Margaret's response carries the weight of absolute moral authority. Mr. Thornfield, you weren't protecting anything. You were perpetuating a system of discrimination that has no place in modern America. The consequences you're about to face aren't punishment, they're accountability. The elevator doors close on Margaret's dignified figure, leaving Derek standing alone in a lobby full of witnesses to his spectacular downfall. His phone rings with the corporate call he can no longer avoid. Senator Bradley approaches with cold fury. Thornfield, my wife recorded your entire racist performance. Expect to hear from our lawyers. Derek Thornfield, who ruled this marble kingdom for 15 years, now faces the ruins of his empire. His victims were never criminals, he was. And justice, delayed but not denied, has finally arrived to collect what he owes. The kingdom has fallen and the king lies broken in the rubble of his own making. Within 48 hours of Derek's spectacular downfall, the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division launches a federal investigation that transforms a single hotel incident into a landmark case of institutional discrimination. Attorney General Rebecca Martinez personally assigns her top prosecutors to examine not just Derek's actions, but the systemic culture that enabled them. Federal investigators descend on the Grandview Plaza like a swarm of highly educated locusts. They subpoena 15 years of guest records, employment files, and internal communications. What they discover makes Derek's treatment of Margaret look like merely the tip of a massive iceberg of discrimination. Email chains reveal Derek's quality control philosophy in devastating detail. Messages to staff include gems like, maintain our clientele standards and certain guests require additional verification. His performance reviews consistently praise him for preserving the hotel's exclusive atmosphere, corporate doublespeak for keeping out unwanted minorities. Former employees emerge from the shadows to testify about Derek's discriminatory practices. Sandra Martinez, a Latina housekeeper fired for insubordination, describes how Derek routinely assigned her to clean rooms of minority guests while warning her to watch for suspicious activity. James Thompson, a black concierge dismissed for attitude problems, testifies that Derek instructed him to direct minority guests toward more affordable neighborhood options, regardless of their actual financial status. The investigation uncovers a pattern spanning Derek's entire career. Guest complaint records show 47 formal discrimination allegations over 15 years, all dismissed by corporate management as isolated misunderstandings or policy confusion. Video evidence proves devastating for Derek's defense. Security cameras capture dozens of incidents where he applied different standards to guests based on race. Phone records reveal he contacted police about minority guests at rates 300% higher than for white visitors. Derek's criminal trial becomes a media sensation that transforms him into the poster child for hospitality industry racism. Prosecutor Maria Santos presents evidence with surgical precision, dissecting each element of Derek's behavior like a pathologist examining diseased tissue. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Santos begins her opening statement, "the defendant didn't just discriminate against Director Wellington. He weaponized federal law enforcement against an innocent woman because he couldn't tolerate seeing a successful black professional in his space." Derek's defense attorney, Robert Kessler, attempts damage control by arguing his client was overzealous in protecting hotel security rather than deliberately discriminatory. The strategy collapses under the weight of Derek's own recorded words. "Your Honor, I present Exhibit 47A, Santos announces, playing Derek's phone call to Detective Morrison. His voice fills the courtroom. "African-American female, mid-40s, well-dressed but trying too hard to look legitimate. These organized fraud rings can be dangerous." The jury's collective wince is audible. Character witnesses paint Derek as a man consumed by racial resentment disguised as professional standards. Dr. Patricia Williams, a sociologist specializing in workplace discrimination, testifies about the psychological profile of perpetrators like Derek. "Mr. Thornfield represents a classic case of institutional gatekeeping," Dr. Williams explains. "He appointed himself guardian of white privilege, using his position to exclude people he deemed unworthy based solely on their appearance." Derek's ex-wife, Patricia Thornfield, delivers the most damaging testimony. "Derek always talked about those people ruining nice neighborhoods and businesses. He saw himself as some kind of defender of proper society." The prosecution presents evidence that Derek's actions compromised national security by interfering with Margaret's classified mission. Director Wellington's testimony about the delayed briefing on infrastructure threats adds gravity that transforms simple discrimination into matters of national importance. "Mr. Thornfield's prejudice didn't just harm me personally," Margaret states with quiet authority. "It potentially compromised America's cybersecurity defenses by preventing critical intelligence from reaching decision-makers." Derek's sentencing hearing becomes a masterclass in judicial condemnation. Judge Harold Morrison, a Reagan appointee with impeccable conservative credentials, delivers a scathing assessment of Derek's character and actions. "Mr. Thornfield, you perverted your position of trust to indulge personal bigotry," Judge Morrison declares. "You turned a place of hospitality into a fortress of discrimination. You weaponized law enforcement against an innocent woman serving her country with distinction." The courtroom gallery includes Margaret, FBI agents Collins and Rodriguez, hotel employees, and civil rights advocates. Derek's family sits in the back row, their faces reflecting shame and disappointment. "Your actions represent everything wrong with the subtle racism that still infects American institutions," Judge Morrison continues. "You wrapped your prejudice in policies and procedures, making discrimination seem professional and reasonable." Derek's voice cracks as he attempts a final statement. "Your Honor, I never intended to harm anyone. I was trying to do my job according to the standards I was taught." Judge Morrison cuts him off with judicial ice. "Mr. Thornfield, intent matters less than impact. Your standards were discriminatory policies designed to exclude people based on race. The court finds no mitigation in your claimed ignorance." The sentence hits Derek like a physical blow. 30 months in federal prison, 5 years supervised probation, $50,000 in fines, and 1,000 hours of community service with civil rights organizations. Additionally, Judge Morrison adds, "You are permanently barred from management positions in the hospitality industry and required to complete intensive bias education programs." The Grandview Plaza Hotel faces its own reckoning. A class-action lawsuit representing 47 discriminated guests results in a $75 million settlement. Corporate headquarters fires 3 executives and implements comprehensive diversity training for all staff. The hotel chain's stock price plummets 15% as investors flee companies associated with discrimination scandals. Shareholders demand accountability from board members who enabled Derek's behavior through years of willful blindness. Congressional hearings examine discrimination in the hospitality industry, with Margaret testifying about the broader implications of bias in businesses serving government officials. Her testimony leads to new federal guidelines requiring anti-discrimination training for companies holding government contracts. Derek's case becomes a textbook example in law schools and business programs nationwide. Professor David Carter at Northwestern University uses it to teach students about the legal and economic consequences of institutional racism. The Thornfield case demonstrates how individual prejudice can destroy entire organizations, Professor Carter explains to his business ethics class. Derek's bigotry cost his company tens of millions and created liability that will haunt them for decades. The ripple effects spread throughout the hospitality industry as companies scramble to audit their own practices. Major hotel chains implement new policies specifically designed to prevent Thornfield incidents that could trigger federal investigations. Derek begins his prison sentence at Federal Correctional Institution, Oxford in Wisconsin, where he shares a cell block with other white-collar criminals who destroyed their lives through poor decisions. His fellow inmates include embezzlers, tax evaders, and fraud perpetrators, none of whom show sympathy for his particular brand of stupidity. Margaret returns to her duties protecting America's digital infrastructure, but her experience transforms her into a powerful advocate for civil rights in federal service. She speaks at conferences, mentors minority professionals, and ensures that Derek's case becomes a lasting lesson about the price of institutional discrimination. Justice, long delayed but finally delivered, has spoken with a voice that echoes through courtrooms, boardrooms, and classrooms across America. 3 years after Derek Thornfield's spectacular downfall, Margaret Wellington stands before a packed auditorium at Georgetown University's Public Policy Institute. Her keynote address on Confronting Institutional Bias in Government Service draws students, professors, and federal officials eager to learn from her experience. The woman who maintained grace under Derek's racist assault has transformed that nightmare into a catalyst for systemic change. Her cybersecurity division now includes mandatory bias training that's become the gold standard across federal agencies. The Wellington Protocols ensure that no government official will face discrimination while serving their country. Margaret's influence extends far beyond government service. She serves on corporate boards, advising Fortune 500 companies on diversity initiatives. Her memoir, Dignity Under Fire, becomes a bestseller that educates millions about the reality of professional discrimination in modern America. The Georgetown audience listens intently as Margaret recounts her hotel experience with the measured tone of someone who's processed trauma into wisdom. She doesn't demonize Derek, but uses his story to illustrate how ordinary people become instruments of systemic oppression. Derek Thornfield wasn't born evil, Margaret explains. He was shaped by institutions that taught him certain people belonged in certain places. His tragedy is that he never questioned those teachings until it was too late. Meanwhile, Derek serves the final months of his federal sentence at a halfway house in Milwaukee. Prison has aged him considerably. His hair turned gray, his face lined with regret and hard-earned wisdom. He participates in restorative justice programs where he speaks to hospitality workers about the consequences of discrimination. His marriage didn't survive the scandal. His children, now adults, maintain minimal contact despite his efforts to rebuild relationships destroyed by his public disgrace. Employment prospects remain bleak, his name forever linked to one of the most infamous discrimination cases in hospitality history. Derek's cellmate for 2 years was Marcus Johnson, a black accountant imprisoned for embezzlement. Their unlikely friendship forced Derek to confront the humanity he'd denied through decades of casual racism. Marcus became Derek's guide through a painful journey of self-examination and attempted redemption. "I can't undo what I did to Director Wellington," Derek tells a group of hotel managers during a mandatory bias training session. "But I can help you understand how normal, decent people can become instruments of injustice when they stop seeing others as fully human." The Grandview Plaza Hotel underwent complete transformation under new management. The lobby where Derek humiliated Margaret now features a permanent diversity and inclusion display. The establishment leads the industry in minority hiring and guest satisfaction across all demographics. Corporate headquarters hired Dr. Sarah Kim, a renowned expert in organizational bias, to completely restructure their company culture. The Grandview standards now refer to excellence in serving all guests with dignity and respect, not exclusion based on appearance or assumed economic status. Margaret's phone still buzzes with calls from Washington, D.C., but now she also receives messages from young minority professionals facing discrimination in their workplaces. She mentors dozens of government employees, sharing strategies for maintaining dignity while fighting systemic bias. Her impact on national security policy remains classified, but colleagues hint that her cybersecurity innovations have prevented major attacks on American infrastructure. The briefing Derek delayed through his prejudice ultimately helped secure the electrical grid against foreign interference. At Georgetown, Margaret concludes her address with words that resonate throughout the auditorium. That hotel incident wasn't about one man's prejudice. It revealed systems that still allow discrimination to flourish when we choose comfort over courage. Every time you witness injustice and stay silent, you become complicit in perpetuating it. She pauses, scanning faces in the crowd, future diplomats, policymakers, and business leaders who will shape America's next chapter. But when you stand up, when you demand better, when you refuse to accept that's just how things are, that's when real change happens. Change doesn't come from perfect people making perfect decisions. It comes from ordinary people choosing courage over comfort, justice over convenience. The standing ovation lasts 3 minutes, but Margaret's message will echo for decades in the careers of everyone present. Derek's story serves as cautionary tale in business schools nationwide, while Margaret's response becomes a masterclass in transforming personal trauma into societal progress. Their collision at the Grandview Plaza created ripples that continue spreading through American institutions. If this story moved you, if it made you examine your own unconscious biases or remember times you witnessed discrimination, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Black Voices Uncut for more stories that matter. Comment with your own experiences. The conversation about bias and justice needs your voice. But most importantly, ask yourself this as you go about your day. When you encounter someone who doesn't look like you, who doesn't dress like you, who doesn't sound like you, what's the first story you tell yourself about who they are? Because that story, that split-second judgment, might be the difference between justice and injustice, between dignity and discrimination, between who we say we are and who we actually choose to be. What story will you choose to tell?
At Black Voices Uncut, we don't polish away the pain or water down the message. We tell it like it is because the truth deserves nothing less. If today's story spoke to you, click like, join the conversation in the comments, and subscribe so you'll be here for the next Uncut Voice.